Hello and welcome back. And in this video, we are going to be creating another function basically to be able to add a new task into core data. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. We're going to create a new function called add new task, and this is going to have a name and due on date. So this add new task is going to take these two things, and if you go back to your add new task view model, this is essentially the information that we need even for the view model. We are just expecting name and due on date to be passed in, and we're going to actually just supply that information down to core data layer so the task can be created with that name and with that due date. So let's go ahead and create our task manage object. So we're going to simply create a task object with a task, and in order to associate this task with the core data current context of core data, we are simply going to initialize with the overload that takes an NSManage object context as the parameter, and we're going to pass our current context into this. Okay, now what we have is basically a task object created, which is not saved yet. It is created and it has all the properties that we can populate and eventually save it under the current context of core data. So that means whenever we call save context, that record that we are creating with this object is going to be saved under the current context of core data into the SQLite file that we have as a backing data store for this core data instance. Okay, so we are simply going to say task.name is equal to the name that's been passed in, and task.due on is the due on date which has been passed in. Okay, now rest of the properties are basically something that we're going to create on our own. For example, we're going to initialize the ID with UUID, and we are also going to say that for every single task that is newly added, we're going to set its completed state as false, because a task cannot be created with a completed state of true. That is not a to-do list task. We are adding a new task because we want to complete it. We want to keep the reminder to ourselves that we need to complete this. Now, next property is completed on. Now this state is irrelevant at this point when we are creating a new task. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create basically a by advancing the due on date by 10,000 or 100,000 in 100,000 time interval, which is going to create a new date by adding that 100,000 to the current date's time interval. So advanced by 100,000. Okay, and then let's go ahead and check. We have total 5 properties, so 1 2 3 4 5. Okay, so now we have all the properties that's been set. We have properties that's been provided by the external function in the form of parameters, and we have created our own parameters, or we have set our own properties based on the value that we think is best representing this task. And now our task is ready to be saved. So we are simply going to call save context, and at this point basically our save context is going to call the context. And now because we have our new task object which is created under the current context, meaning it has marked the status of context as it has the changes, so this condition is going to become true, and then we're going to have basically this block executed, try to save the context by saving all the data that has been staged onto the context. So we're going to basically store our new record onto the core data stack. Okay, all right, so with that our new add new task function is ready to be used, and in the next video we are going to be creating our toggle completed function which is going to help us update a record with the completed state of toggle, or basically completed state of a task, or toggle between true and false values for the completed status. Okay, so I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you.